To be honest with you, like there was a moment for me where I was like, I don't really even know if anyone will get this, but what I do know is they will be changed from witnessing this. And there was a moment during the process that felt really revolutionary for me because I released the need to know why. I just knew that it was.
Aloha, I am Noe. My English pronouns are he, they, and I am here with the Daybreak Star Radio Network. Excited to be in conversation with House of Kilig. Mahalo, everyone, for being here. I would love to just dive into the first question if y'all want to introduce yourselves. So, we'd love to know who is House of Kilig and what does Kilig mean to you?
Hi, my name is Heidi Garza-Cunha. You can also call me HGA. My pronouns are they, she. And House of Kilig is a group of queer and trans artists, creatives, collaborating together, building community, doing art events, community building events, and just want to be in space together. And Kilig, I think the best way that people typically describe it is that feeling of butterflies in your stomach.
Hi everyone. My name is Nala Angel. I'm also widely known as Muñeca.
This is Kai speaking, he, they pronouns.
So, along with Kilig, how do the principles of Marte and kapwa, how do they intertwine with your being and take shape within your creative expression?
So Maarte is when I was growing up, I thought it meant like annoying because that's how my mom would just call me out on things. But I think a better translation would be like dramatic and just over the top. It's in your face. You're doing the most. Alongside with your question, kapwa is like a real Filipino core value of interconnectedness, togetherness. If my art's not maarte, I'm not doing enough. If it's not maarte, I'm not being true enough. I'm not embodying enough. I'm not challenging to the question that needs to be answered. Um, and it goes really hand in hand because sometimes Nana and I will talk about like there's no such thing as a solo artist as you're so influenced by the people that came before you, the people you're in community with now. So I love that House of Kilig offers us a place to really meet those two together with multiple people.
But there's sort of this inner and outer, and we live in this world where there's such like rugged individualism. And I think about how uncomfortable that's always felt for me and how much resistance I get personally from institution and sort of our systems around like being collaborative is like kind of frowned upon, or it gets sort of siloed into people like to call it community art as if it's like not as important as quote unquote high art. And so now there's this interesting shift in the world where um, you're thinking about like the Andy Warhol Foundation grants being now very interested in collaborative art and what collaboration is. So I just needed to say that on the principles of Maarte and Kapwa.
So, for folks who have yet to see two of your most recent projects, I Was Never the Siren and Flourish Like an Ocean's Grief, how would you describe them?
To be honest with you, like there was a moment for me where I was like, I don't really even know if anyone will get this, but what I do know is they will be changed from witnessing this. Like that's like where I got to with the process where I was like, I think for me and undoing a lot of colonial structures that have been like deeply embedded in my own body, I feel like I always need to know why I'm doing something. Like I feel that in order to be worthy to be witnessed, I need to be like certain about what the point is, and I'm undoing all that colonial bullshit in my body as I work with these folks and as I love myself and as I heal. And there was a moment during the process that felt really revolutionary for me because I released the need to know why. I just knew that it was. And there was something really profound about that. And as I describe it now, when folks, I meet and I'm like, oh, worked on a film, they're like, what is it? And I'm like, I think it's a love letter to trans people. I think it's a love letter to the transcendence of trans and love, and this idea of queering the family structures and queering what love can look like. It's a relationship, an animism between like self and nature. It's a lot. There's a lot there.
Remything the siren archetype from a queer and trans perspective. And maybe our lovely director will speak more about it.
Essentially, we go through a journey where we really studied Harana. And here's the thing about being queer and trans is like, Harana is a tradition of courtship. It's very like that movie where there's a boombox at the window, and like I forgot what movie that is, and that white girl looks down and then she's like, "Oh, you love me." Except it's not that. It's like they're doing like an acoustic instrument, and the Filipino, usually guy, is trying to serenade the usually girl in their home. And that was like the first rites of passage before they even like got to date, right? And so we were creating our own harana. And in that way, we're bastardizing harana, I will say. Like people will be like, oh, that's not traditional. That's not how we do it. And so I was never the siren like that. Even the line and the name of that is to sort of like spin the fact that even when we claim who we are, we don't even get to be who we are. So how about we spit it back in their face and just be bastardized about it? And then Flourish Like an Ocean's Grief was basically our deconstructed exhibit of the film.
How do we remember, and what does it mean to be remembered, especially within our respective lineages and indigeneities?
I want to uplift Alexis Pauline Gumbs in this space. They speak about this one type of dolphin. I'm going to butcher it, but it's a bottlenose dolphin, but it comes from a specific part of the world. And the way that bottlenose dolphins in this part of the ocean take care of each other is that when there's a pregnant parent who is getting ready to give birth, 3 weeks before that baby is put into the world, a pod of dolphins swims around the parent dolphin and creates a sort of sonic barrier so that the parent dolphin can sing to its baby and be remembered. So anytime the baby hears their name, they have it in their memory. Like it's deeply ingrained in their memory. And there's this kapwa that happens between the pod and the parent where basically it's this like idea of like you get the right to be remembered and we will hold you in that, right? And I grieve being in this society, in this culture, because we're not given the tools to really do that for each other very well. And I believe that my adulthood has been trying to figure out how to be a good pod mate without any sort of like adults who have taught me that. I don't have role models in that way. But I do believe that nature is a way for us to learn about what it means to have the right to be remembered because nature is doing that all the time, right? And so I think sometimes it's hard to like talk about being remembered, especially for myself as a transsexual person, as someone who has gone through a lot of family of origin rejection and social rejection to be who I am. There's this sense of like remembering being a construct that's only made for certain people. And I've been doing a lot of undoing around that and really coming home to this idea that like, no, I also get to take my dismembered self that had a purpose. There was medicine there because dismembering is a way of surviving, right? I still do that all the time. I have to do that all the time in all the ways that we code switch in the world. But how do I get the inherent right back to be remembered? And how do I learn how to be both a pod mate and be the parent dolphin, also be that baby? Like, how do I do all of those things depending on where I'm at? That made sense to me. I was like, right, like to be remembered means that we have to be in kapwa. We have to practice that.
How has this subversion and questioning of this form taken shape, and how do you utilize that as a social practice?
Karana as a structure exposes the grief. Like love, to initiate a love ritual is to expose all the life pathways, all the rites and rituals you need to access love, which means you need to be risque, brave, and like in surrender around the way love is going to transform you. And that's not gonna be like this cute, like optic Kodak moment every time. That's gonna feel pretty bad sometimes, or like the grief of being on a new horizon that maybe none of your ancestors knew about, or maybe it's going to feel like a curse break. And of course, maybe your ancestors that you're like keep asking questions to also don't know the answer because they're looking to you. So it's like you're being initiated into into being this like loving ancestor and to continue that work of love.
How do we hold the complexity of queerness and transness outside of Western white Eurocentric frameworks, also holding that we have to survive in those frameworks? Yeah. How do we navigate through them?
Yeah, for our listeners, we had a little bit of our Mercury retrograde meltdown. So I was channeling, I think, a little bit to this question earlier. So I'll try and repeat, but it might be different this time around. But yeah, I really appreciate this question because I feel like there are things that I want to ground us in as we explore it, which is that as we know, things like gender and race are socially constructed concepts, right? I want to uplift that there's a history of anti-indigeneity and anti-blackness that's rooted in some of the language that we have to talk about race and talk about gender specifically. And less than 100 years ago, for example, on like a pathological level, the term queer was used to demonize Black womanhood, Black feminists, Indigenous womanhood, Indigenous feminists at a medical level, right? So if you were to go back into the word archives, the medical archives, during the original, like sort of, um, I don't know the word I want to use, but the inception of modern day sexologists who are all cis white men, you'll see that in the records, they would describe Black and brown femmes navigating the medical system as queer, as a way to demonize their sort of difference from Eurocentrism that existed as like the framework for our medical system that is still to this day how we operate. We see that in the way anti-trans legislation exists in our country right now, because of the ways in which Eurocentric values has really implemented and infiltrated the way we think about race and we think about gender in our modern day society. But when we think about these things from an Indigenous perspective, we can understand that like we have had to adapt and learn as Black and brown people, as queer and trans people, how to survive those oppressive constructs in order to survive, right? So I am really interested in this idea of how if we can acknowledge that gender is illegitimate but heavily enforced, there's a lot of room to play in that, right? There's a lot of ways in which we can start to get really curious about ourselves. I think about for me as I have explored my own transsexuality, like I think part of me allowing myself to be free has been acknowledging that I might need to cosplay or drag manness, manhood out in the world in a way that could be intimidating or scary to do. But when I reclaim my power in that, there's something really juicy about this idea of dragging gender, right? Like this idea of dragging what people perceive to be a man and really holding that in this like divine protective spell. I just like want anybody who is curious about themselves and their gender to really allow the space to always be unfurling, like to always, 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 always be like in this curiosity, because that's what's going to keep us alive, actually, like is being curious and allowing the expansion to expand.
I was really, really drawn towards lyrics, like music lyrics, and so I'd hear it one way, and then I would check it later on dial-up internet, and it would be a different lyric, but I would keep writing it or hearing it the same way. That kind of turned into like a little hobby.